side, success simply is translated into events like this, action plans like this, and the intentionality of knowing that it can be done. But at the same time, being realistic that we cannot undo 400 plus years of specific systemic racism and oppression in just a few years, a few decades, but we need to dream big and we need to act in a big way. And lastly, it is a call for action for all of us here. This is not a black versus white. This is not a brown versus white. This has to be a black plus brown plus everybody else against the system that has intentionally benefited some and systemically left others behind. So let's not lose out on the amazing opportunity to truly build a bridge between black and brown communities, and the District of Columbia can lead the way nationwide. We combined will make up the majority of the population in this country. Let's not waste that opportunity to intentionally disrupt that systemic racist approach.
Y'all feel smarter today?
We are nearing our close, but before we close, we will hear a brief reflection from a DC resident who participated in several of our engagement forums over the summer, Mr. Kamon Freeman, co-founder of We Act Radio and recent Changemaker honoree with the Catalog of Philanthropy. Sorry. Mr. Freeman.
All right, peace and blessings. I want to be brief because you know they only gave the Angry Black Man in Therapy just a few moments here with you today. Let's start off by first congratulating our Madam Mayor on her historic third term. And I love what she's doing with her hair. I'm happy to see that her legacy building is including a commitment to a racial equity strategic plan to address the divestment and equities of our city that has been caused by past government policies, like the DC Community Development Consortium that has awarded grant-secured loans via Ward 8 Community Investment Fund to small businesses, of which I am also a recipient. Also, as a board member of Douglas Community Land Trust, I would like to greatly appreciate her support and the $2 million that the DC Housing and Community Development has allocated, not yet received, but allocated. Thank you. I took part in several of the community engagement forums during the process of the Racial Equity Action Plan, and the outcome brings me here today to speak to you. I'm here to stress the importance of government partnering with residents, especially those most impacted by inequity, so that we no longer have public policy without public input. I must also, well, thank you, give it up, you can say it. The comment section is open to January the 2nd, so the public input is on you. So as We Act Radio, we like to say do something. So when I say We Act Radio, you say do something. We Act Radio. So we can depend on you to make some public comments and input, correct? And you have until when? All right, that should do something. But I must, however, caution that we must have guardrails in place to ensure the implementation of true racial equity. With the average white family having 81 times the wealth of the average black family in Washington, D.C., I am concerned about the ongoing housing crisis and the slippery slope of property tax as its forever increasing sliding scale that is currently functioning as a modern-day redlining. Before the pandemic, a 30-year-old cultural institution across the street from Howard University, Sankofa Video and Bookstore, was awarded a tax abatement to address these concerns. But despite the approval of proposed legislation, they have also yet to receive those funds and are still currently in jeopardy with the Office of Tax and Revenue. There are homeowners in the city that, if they own a second home, are subjected to a much higher vacant property tax rate, even if their property is not blighted and well maintained. So while we move forward with a racial equity plan to correct past wrongs, we must also apply that same lens across the board for existing policies. And let me close by saying this. If you were to pull out your phone and Google the word equity, click images, the first image you will see is 3 boys who can't afford a ticket to a baseball game. Equality is to give each one of those boys a box to stand on. Equity takes into account that those 3 boys are a different height and that the tallest doesn't need a box and the shortest needs 2. That is what we're trying to do with equity, and our mayor is going to help us get us there. But she's going to need all of our support and input, and the comment section is open until January the 2nd. do something. Shout out to Carter G. Woodson. We on the block for Carter G. Woodson. I got to make sure I put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. And to close us out, I would like to invite up a very thoughtful partner in our work, Reverend Thomas Bowen, Director of the Mayor's Office of African American Strategic Engagement.
Thank you, Dr. Hewitt, and thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Hewitt, and thank you, Madam Mayor. One Sunday, someone did what no one in this room would ever do. They came into a church service only to find out that they had missed the entire service. So he politely asked the usher when the service began because they didn't want to miss it the next week. And the usher looked at the individual and said, the service begins after the benediction. And so we are here because the service is about to begin after the benediction. Last week we voted, but voting is only one leg of that stool when it comes to civic participation. There's also engagement, which our offices in community affairs continue to do each and every day. I'm proud to say, Brother Johnson, that as you gave your remarks, that we now have open the new Mayor's Office of Deaf, Deafblind, and Hard of Hearing, helmed by Sister Carrie Cook. We need to consider totality of all our DC residents. Calvin Butts once profoundly stated, there is a separation of church and state, but there's no separation between church and community. And in that vein, there's no separation between government and community. As Mayor has already stated, we cannot easily undo the 100 years or hundreds of years of discrimination. The work will not be easy, but it's critical and is essential. On the back, you'll find on the table, as Kimon has already stated, ways that you can participate in this public comment section, which closes at 5 p.m. on January the 2nd. It's going to take all of us in this room. And this is the one time I would say this statement which causes me to cringe. We want you to go home and turn to your neighbor on the left and the right. Turn to your neighbor in your communities, in the coffee house that you visit, at the bus stop, or wherever you have time, and tell them that the path forward, the light green for us, is to go forward together. Thank you, each and every one. Let us depart now, ready to serve.